place to go. I need a place to go.
They say they carry their lost. A broken second line of dormant trumpets, baritone in their romp. The ancestors applaud from below. Another grandchild coming home. But the lost never feel heard. But the herd is always singing. Trayvon, Tamir, Michael, Devon, Oscar, trombone pickets and clarinet signs. I want to say welcome back, but you ain't going nowhere. The ground clearly holds your progression. And somewhere in that abyss of poached, they will find black boy tusks and carcasses and see that all of our bones were the same. But you know us black folks, don't you? We will be out there with a song, hopeful like bees, or should I say ants. We clearly march wingless, but that's where all that bass comes from. That's where all that resilience was born. That's how we line up. It's hard having compassion, but the tyranny of some will not steal the bellows' oxygen, and we will sing like flames, sending our prayers to blacksmiths in hopes for just a bit more armor. And if it don't come, well, we will beat the ground until the cicadas are fluent in locusts. Until the trees look like a murmuration, they will remember you, son. They will. You will be etched in tectonics, carved in conga-stretched monarch hide, with elephant carriage caskets carrying you home. You see, years from now, they will find your weathered remains. This music beaten into your bones, clarinet columns, trombone throat, and a snare heart. No one will care about indictments, no. Only the sound that the ground makes when something holy is stolen. Never late, always on time, call in a half shake, response on the downbeat. Could you hear them stepping for you, son? The whole city stopped like they had seen the sky erupt in your name. Even the flowers came out to boogie, dressed in their Sunday best, reminding us that you never left, that they took your body, but never your spirit. You were our twist in the storm, and you will not be remembered as sundown, but forever sunny side up next to daybreak's fresh catch. Explosive laughter in all the wrong moments. Still tomorrow's hope latched to knees under mama's sundress, and we will call you Is Boy. Was was never your name. Each step above you a key, striking the pipe organ in your stripped dust. So feel free to bop. Let your jives jitter the way they did when you came in. And all these heads wave, trunks wave like a vein uprooting the ground's hallelujah. Tubas bump, hips pop, smiles melt into your wave. Today you wrote the sheet music, and we had no other choice but to move.
Peace and greetings, friends. Welcome to Headroom Sessions, a conversation on Black space. I am your host, Quinn Marchman. Before we get started, we just wanted to take a moment and send a message out and hope that the Facebook Headrooms community can help us. We are looking for a member of the Youth on Records family, Irie Logan. He has been missing since June 13th around 6 a.m. If you all could follow the information and just share. At this time of all times, we want a young Black man to be back home. So if you could all do that, that would bring our community that much closer together. In this time, though, I am super excited to be hosting this discussion, conversation on Black space, with three incredible artists and movers and shakers in our community. I would love to first introduce July. July, hello.
Hola.
Peace to you. July, can you give us an introduction of yourself as an artist? How do you move throughout this world?
Definitely. I am July. I am UC Denver alumni, TED Talk alumni, and currently I'm working at Youth on Record during Open Lab with the students, teaching them how to make beats, teaching them how to mix and record themselves so that their voices can be heard and amplified. That sums it up.
Well, thank you for the amplification of the youth.
Of course.
Next on our panel, we have Danette. Good evening to you.
Hello. Hi. Yes, Danette, local vocalist, community member. Jazz is my life. And I'm just really happy to be here to have this conversation with y'all.
Sure thing. And I love the universal vibes. You and July are competing for best background.
July already won. Hers is, yeah, she's got it. She's got it.
No comment.
Well, then, not to diminish the background and the foreground of our last panelist, JOVAN, who y'all just saw. Good evening, JOVAN. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing all right. This is cool. Glad to be here. This is awesome.
Awesome. And just who are you in this world? How do you move as an artist in this space?
Yeah, I mean, primarily, I'm a poet, but I also serve as the youth voice coordinator for Aurora Public Schools. So I am heavily engaged in trying to figure out how to help people access their story to be able to bring their truth to power. So that's about it.
Just about it. I love it. All y'all summed it up. This nice bow on all of the hard work and hustle that y'all do. To get the discussion started, I first just want to say happy Juneteenth to y'all. I think a lot of America just realized that's a thing, and now they're trying to act right. So I mean, this is a time of so much upheaval, rebellion, and in some ways, I want to say celebration of showcasing the fact that the Black struggle is now on the forefront in a way that it has never been, and punctuated beautifully by governments and corporations saying, okay, yeah, we'll celebrate Juneteenth for the first time ever. The first discussion I want to have about this is really the role of the Black artists in protests. How do you kind of carve space within the protest, but I think in all of y'all's work as well, there is an underlying purpose to why you are creatives. So I'd just love to have this be a free flow conversation about you as Black people in the Black space. I'll shoot it to Danette first, the opening salvo, please.
Of course. So I can speak from a Black woman's perspective. I am a jazz musician. Musicianship, the space of jazz is really male dominated. It's really white male dominated. Which is really interesting considering how deeply the jazz roots run in the Black community. I started singing jazz in this town at about 18, 19 years old. That was 20 years ago. I am definitely a different person, a different artist now, but in the very beginning, I really had to demand space and opportunity to be present, to express myself. Became really important to me. I started singing jazz on happenstance, got a scholarship for a preservation program to when nobody was really interested in jazz. It was kind of fizzling out. That phase was over. We were moving into more of an R&B scene. So there was just these opportunities for scholarships laying around and nobody was interested, let alone Black students. So I found myself in this very white world, taking classes on performance style, history of all of these things to do with jazz, and they were very Black. And it just really triggered me that I needed to reclaim this in sort of a Sankofa kind of way. But I was up against quite a bit in that plight, even though the program was about preserving this as a culture, as a practice, jazz music. It was very white dominated. And I found myself really fighting to claim space in that space for myself, for Black women. So.
If I could just a follow-up to that, because you really put an emphasis on the fact you had to demand that. And I think as artists in general, it is hard for us to demand our value, but especially you're new to the game, you would say 18, 19 years old. How did you take that space? Like what within you was like, okay, we got to make this happen?
Well, I think sometimes, I was a Black woman and I was a young mother. So there was a lot of stereotypes and just things in society that were sort of telling me that I had no business pursuing a music career, for instance. I think a lot of artists are up against this concept of you're not going to make any money in this field. So I had the double whammy of being an artist and having children. So I had a lot of people kind of hitting me with the, how dare you pursue something that's not going to make money? How are you going to take care of your family? So I would have to bring my children sometimes to music class for some of these music programs, whereas a lot of my comrades and my other fellow students, they had gotten, their parents were paying their rent, had bought them new musical equipment for the program, for school. We were just in a different place. And sometimes I felt as though I didn't belong. And sometimes I felt like the people around me made sure I knew that I didn't belong. I was young, so I didn't know how much of that was rooted in racism or me being a woman or me being a mother. And, we're a bunch of 19-year-olds. Everybody doesn't have kids when they're 19. But the more I started to read the stories of these women who were involved in music, Billie Holiday and Ella, and these women were a lot like me and had been through, had lived at the poverty line and had some really interesting stories. And I found myself empowered by their stories. And so I wasn't really in a space after a little while of learning to let anybody tell me any different. I belong here. I belong here. My kids, all of it. my short pockets, all of it. I get to be here. It's not some privilege that you get to keep for yourself. And not just a woman, but a Black woman. These songs are about Black people. And these songs were about some of those original Black struggles and that Black revolution, Harlem Renaissance, you know, things like that.
I love that. It seems like as you spread your wings, you were able to take more and more space, and then just all of a sudden, like, you know, you might have had some great people in your class, but ain't none of them Danette. Like, you are in ways the face of jazz in Denver. So I personally thank you for claiming that space, because it has brought the root of the community back to the forefront in beautiful ways. July, I'm really interested. You're talking about your work with at Youth on Record, teaching students how to create beats and amplify their voices. Where did your voice come from, and how, as a producer and musician, how do you take that space?
My voice came from being shy most of my life. I would barely talk in class. Wasn't, I guess, an engaged kid, and I can't say I went to a top of the line school. We definitely weren't the best funded. I really didn't care, to be honest. So when I found something that interested me, I definitely immersed myself into it, and that was music. I had this terrible digital software that I used and started recording myself, and I just stuck with it and upgraded over time. I got my first job, got a piano, got a set of speakers, all of those things, and then I saw the program at CU Denver, and decided to join the recording arts program. I got accepted. My senior year, Andy Rock of the Flowbots, he reached out to me, asked me if I would be interested in working at Youth on Record with the youth, and I did the interview, and I got a position doing open lab as an open lab instructor. So my voice definitely came through latching onto music, as I was vastly disinterested in everything else in the world.
I guess that makes it helpful if you just narrow it down, like whack, 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 whack. Okay, this is kind of cool. Okay,
Yeah.
that feel.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to ask then, so like, say for other shy kids, how did you take like your love of what you did into a position where it's like, well, I'm gonna teach you like what I know? I think that's a really big step to take as an artist, is to then share your talent.
I just fell into it, to be honest. I didn't understand the concepts super easily. Like, it's like a foreign language. If I start talking about reverbs, delays, compression, and all of those things, the vast majority of a population isn't going to understand those things. So I had to teach myself, and I taught myself before I got to college, which was kind of a double-edged sword because I was kind of bored. But in teaching myself these things and figuring out how to break it down to the point where I really understood it, I was able to explain it to other people. So I was using the software that not many people used. Therefore, there wasn't a lot out there for online instruction. So I had started a YouTube channel fulfilling the need that wasn't being fulfilled, started making tutorials for that, and then I just stuck with it. So 400 YouTube videos later, teaching people, I now do private lessons, and I teach people upwards of like 65 how to make music on their computers. And then I also have to teach them how to use Zoom because, they're 65. And I teach youth also. So I get both ends of the spectrum. It's like, I know how to use a computer, but I don't know how to do this. And then I don't know how to do any of this. Help. So I definitely fell into it, and I don't regret it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I am curious, like, what is a software? But unless they're paying you, we won't give them.
I am sponsored by Reason Studios, Waves Audio, and Plugin Boutique.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We love it. We love it. Shout out, JOVAN. I think we didn't get to hear your piece on this end of it, but I guess my first question is, in terms of the zeitgeist we're in right now, why did you choose that piece? And can you tell us a little bit about it for me who didn't get to hear it?
Yeah. A while back, I want to say following Freddie Gray, I started thinking about I'm working on a book project right now that kind of explores the intersection between the country's historical treatment of circus elephants and how it mirrors the country's historical treatment of Black youth. And I started imagining if when we experience these like crazy police brutality deaths, if there was a funeral procession that could happen that would have a intense magnitude, what would it look like? And I started thinking about how New Orleans funeral marches are set up and how, you know, you kind of experience a dirge on your way to the cemetery and then a spiritual on your way back from the cemetery. I started imagining, instead of like horse carriage caskets, if it was elephant carriage caskets, and, you know, and the ground vibrated when we knew this, and the whole town knew that we lost something of this value and this importance, what that would be like. The poems also to kind of reaffirm the way I sort of see the Black community's role in protest, and the way that we seem to consistently line up in the way that we've sort of mobilized in this way for centuries. And there's a line in the poem, you know, of us praying to blacksmiths and hope for just a bit more armor. And if it don't come, well, we will beat this ground until the cicadas are fluent and locusts, until the trees look like a murmuration. They will remember you, son, they will. You will be etched in tectonics, carved in conga stretch monarchide with elephant carriage caskets carrying you home. And the idea of it is to really hold the importance of what's kind of happening in the now, and then also on the backside to make sure that we're celebrating the loss or celebrating the life of the person as well. And so I've always been a fan of poems that like happen in parts. And I like that the New Orleans Funeral March tradition set up in 2 parts, and trying to figure out as a writer how to write into those sections was a good time in this poem. And I personally feel like it executes how I feel about these situations pretty well.
Just for our followers who didn't get to see the poem, you can head over to headroomsessions.com and check that out. Thank you for even that piece. Felt moved by it, and adding the beautiful visuals makes it all the better. You made a great point in just terms of like, that was kind of your contribution to the protest movement in this moment. And of course, we would be remiss to ask you all how you are doing as artists and Black people. Like, have you been focusing on working more, or trying to just be present for the protest? Like, I guess really, like, how are we coping with this moment?
Yeah, so I am 8 months pregnant at the moment. So it really wasn't a question of following social distance guidelines and really protecting myself and my unborn child. I had hoped that this quarantine would produce some, you know, masterpiece like Lauryn Hill, and all of that, you know, and I thought I was gonna come out with like, now the joy is Zion, you know. But it's a different ballgame when you don't have your community support, you don't have the ability to go out. I think some people are really productive in those spaces where they can just, you know, go into a dark room and produce. I learned a lot about myself during this time, that's not who I am. I need people. I need inspiration. And what I saw happening when I would tune in online, I've never been an online girl. You know, so the idea of putting on, you know, a live stream show or something, it was just like, you know, I'm a jazz musician. I need somebody, all I need is a drum kit and an upright bass. That's who I am. And so absent of that, I've had to really figure out who I am as an artist. But I need people. I'm an artist who needs people. So it's been really difficult. Talk about artist block. I got nothing. I made a video with some pictures that have inspired me when I sort of live stream the protests and things that are happening in the world. I made a video recently to a song that I recorded, Strange Fruit. It's obviously not my song, written by Abel Mearpole, I believe is the way you say his name, but he's sort of popularized by Billie Holiday. And I just decided to dust that one off because all of a sudden we're hanging Black people again. Who knew? And so I found it relevant, and that has been my contribution to the movement. But yeah, I am staying my pregnant self out of the crowds, out of the pepper spray, out of COVID, you know, as much as possible.
One time for all the extroverts, it hurts. Like,
I've been struggling.
For the artists who, like, we bring people together and not being able to do that, you never have that much empathy for the extroverts, but right now, we hurting. July, what about for you, your relationship to creating in the end times? How have you been, how have you been processing all of this?
I've been doing a lot of writing, and I would say it is a double-edged sword to be, I don't know, I can't say it's a sword, but in being so influenced by what's going on, all of my writing is reflective of our time. So I was writing a song about depression and anxiety and like bipolar disorder, those types of things. And it actually started to turn into a race poem. It was about being proud of being Black and everything that's going on with, say, the protests in general and George Floyd. So I had sat down with an intention to write down about, you know, ways that people cope, whether it be, you know, drugs, alcohol, anything like that. And it automatically turned into Black. So I think my creation has definitely been affected by protests in terms of me not being able to process anything else.
Yeah, I mean, like, talk about depression, anxiety, and racism is an endless fuel to that internal fire. And it's really hard to divorce ourselves from everything going on. One thing I'm super interested in is, like, I haven't been able to go down to the protests myself because of people in my family, but for anyone who's ever been in a protest, for lack of a better word, it is exciting in some way, shape, or form. And I mean, for me, I remember when I first heard Sam Cooke, Change Gonna Come, I'm like, everyone should listen to this because then we'll just figure everything out. I'm interested, like, what is y'all's soundtrack to the revolution in a way? Like, what, if you can't be down there, what are some musical influences or pieces of art that feed that spirit for you?
It's on JOVAN's wall. We gonna be all right.
Hey.
We gonna be all right. I was gonna say that. That's definitely one. Sam Cooke is great.
Yeah, that song.
Oh, that change gonna come. It's been a long time though. Has anybody noticed that we're sort of singing the same songs? Why is Strange Fruit a relevant song right now? Why is Strange Fruit relevant?
I think
that's trash.
For me, How Many Miles Must We March by Ben Harper. Call It What It Is by Ben Harper. I think both of those songs really hit me in a pretty intense way around the relevance of the current moment. This Is America by Childish Gambino. I think those are songs that do sort of pivoted to modernize the statements, but I do feel what you're saying, Danette, about the antiquation of some of these songs' relevance to a current time. And I mean, I think when you take into like Mississippi Goddams and you start digesting a lot of that Nina Simone civil rights era stuff, that sort of attacked from an angle that wasn't going to be allowed to be popularized. I mean, It's really, really interesting how that kind of comes together with protest. But protest is so weird, man. Like, I was kind of vibing with y'all and talking about, some of the freezing points, because it's hard to know how to be super impactful during this current time. I think for me personally, it's like this interesting responsibility that you have to balance between responsibility for yourself, responsibility for your community, and then honestly, if I don't know if y'all feel the same, but you have this interesting responsibility that you have to decide whether you want or not of being responsible to your allied community that does not know how to approach the current time. And I think that's what's been interesting about George Floyd is like, I don't know if I'm keeping it real. Was George Floyd that much different than Freddie Gray? Was George Floyd that much different than Eric Garner? Like, we saw the 8 minutes and 46 seconds was certainly the staggering piece, I think, of this. But this, to me, was more like, this was COVID and white America's moment to go and figure out, like, oh yeah, that's what they were talking about. Oh, and it's like, to a degree, it's like, you almost want to like thank COVID. You almost want to be like, hey, yo, COVID, I appreciate you giving us that spotlight, because without you, we've been trying all sorts of things that didn't work, but for some reason you made it work. Appreciate you, COVID. I know you stealing us up and bringing us back to our homecoming still, but you're still looking out this way in this weird world that we live in right now. And so it's a hard navigation to think about a protest song that is relevant to this current one. I mean, that is a weird song. That is a weird COVID song. Like, I don't even know.
Right.
Sick of being tired of being sick.
Yeah.
and tired of being sick.
Yeah, JOVAN, you brought up a great point. It's like, how responsible can you be for yourself? I mean, like, Black mental health is a revolutionary concept, and just taking time to drink water and going to bed early in and of itself is like forwarding a movement. But then on the idea of allyship, it's been mad interesting. I don't know if any of y'all have gotten the, hey, just checking in, how you doing messages.
Tons.
And feeling mad ambivalent towards it, like cool and oh god. What?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, JOVAN, you said the word responsibility, which is uncomfortable because it ain't our responsibility, but ain't no one going to do it for us. So like, how do you all navigate that with certainly the well-meaning friends who ain't got anything else to do besides be down at this moment and really want to be part of it? What is that? I don't even say like right, wrong answer, but what has that relationship been for you in these times?
I mean, I think for me, it's been really important to see the generational privileges that I received that the generation before me did not. And to know that, like, for me personally, I have to be a flag bearer. I have to continue to carry. And I think that, sometimes I hear about the weight of the burden sometimes, and I don't turn off when people talk about the weight of their burden. But it certainly wasn't the weight of the burden before us. And this burden is going to carry on to the next generation. And I think that's one of the things that I took from this George Floyd incident is that, okay, it was like kind of my official understanding of like, we're not going to see this in my lifetime. I'm not going to see this turnkey in my lifetime. I think I understood that, but I have always been, I guess, a leaner into hope. And so I think for me personally, I do assume the responsibility. I take it and I do feel like it is a part of my job, will be a part of my legacy, and will be a part of the hopefully a collective impact. But it's, I think we live in a state where, I mean, white folks have an interesting way of showing up for these types of issues, and then they have a very common follow-up of disappearing, and I'm just trying to figure out the best ways I can keep them showing up. Yeah.
I would say I am pleasantly surprised at how many white folks have showed up on my end. Pleasantly surprised and completely disturbed and shocked by some of the people. I'm like, how are we friends? Some of the stuff that I see that they're posting, like, woo, that makes me really uncomfortable. That's the interesting thing about art, is that it brings out all kinds of people, right? And so you have people who have been coming to my shows for 15 years, have bought my music, have supported me, have promoted my shows, are posting about how great Trump is, or posting about how Ahmaud got caught shoplifting at Walmart 3 years ago. And, or that there's no such thing as white privilege or white supremacy. And I'm just really shocked. Like, wow, that's a really nice white lady who comes to all my shows. And so I'm just a little, and this isn't new for me. Like, oh, it's a protest, so maybe now I share a meme that's a little controversial or Black Lives Matter kind of influences. That's nothing new. They have just chosen to remain quiet, or just chosen to ignore it, or chosen not to respond until recent events have happened. And people are really showing themselves. I've had to block quite a few, but the people who I do consider friends and close, and not just fans or supporters, because when you're an artist, you kind of just got to love everybody who's going to show up for you. It's not really political in that sense, or at least not for me. Like, if you're going to come to my shows, yes, you can be my friend on social media, no big deal. But not if you're going to be posting racist stuff. So it's been interesting sort of filtering through people who are actual friends, actual allies, versus people who I don't know why they've been supporting me. Honestly, it doesn't seem like they like people of color very much. So that's been my experience. I think allies are important, but I'm also in a place, I don't have any problems blocking and checking people either. I'm definitely not the agreeable Negro. I'm not going to be nice about it. I don't care if you come to my show ever again. You know what I mean? My ancestors have fought really hard for me to have the privilege, as JOVAN said, to check you and let you know what it is and where this comes from. I can smile and entertain you, but there's something going on behind that too. It's not, yeah.
Got your prayer beads out.
Yeah. Ain't nobody got time for that.
I certainly don't want to make assumptions of age and generational differences within this conversation. But July, you said you're still in school, and so I'm super interested. I think even the millennial class, now we've been through like the Obama years and realized, oh, that didn't solve it. And then like the first wave of Black Lives Matter stuff. So I'm interested if you've interfaced with any people in college or younger folks. Do you see a difference in, especially in like the ally white space, and how they're reacting to this?
I actually graduated college last May, but with what you were saying, I do see a difference in what Danette was just saying and what's going on with my generation. There have been white people that reached out and checked on me, but those same white people were also protesting. It wasn't just like a sly, hey, I hope you're okay. And in addition to white people, it's been Mexicans, Latinas, Hispanics, all kinds of different people of different nationalities reaching out to say, hey, are you okay? Because not only Black people are oppressed, not that this isn't what this is about right now, but they do have some form of understanding of what I might be feeling, or what my friends of, my color might also be feeling. Specifically my white friends I'm very grateful for my white friends who are out there protesting, and they're, as we're saying, they are the perfect allies. I mean, I can't say fight white with white, but it's the safest fight.
I mean, you can if you
You
want.
can, okay, well then it's the safest fight to have white people on our side. And so much is considered white nowadays. It's like Jewish people, they went through the Holocaust. I have a Jewish white friend who supports me, and she reached out and checked on me to make sure I was okay. I can't say that she knows what our struggle is, but her ancestors, they knew what our struggle was. And if we talk about pain runs deep. It runs through our bloodlines. So am I supposed to discredit her from any pain her aunt? I can't do that. That's not on me. Only God could judge. But I do acknowledge that. So I think my generation is definitely a few steps ahead in terms of, bringing forth change than any older one. We could be on the same page in some ways, just because of the times wherein everything's digital and it might be hard to keep our attention. That's a common cliche. We don't really pay attention long. And the people, the generation under me, you might say the same thing about them, but it doesn't matter. Oppression happens in all forms, whether physically or digital, online. So I think we're doing pretty well for a couple generations full of youngins.
Yeah, for sure. What's funny is that, it's not funny, but Danette was talking about Amor Meerpool. He's a Jewish school teacher who wrote
Abel, yeah.
Abel Meerpool. Yeah. And so I've always felt like the like you're saying, July, like we sort of sometimes have like such an inclusivity to what is defined as white. And I feel like I have experienced of my friend group, the majority of my Jewish friends are usually the faster acting people to kind of come reach out.
Gotta love them.
Yeah. I just think that, it's challenging because, it's reactionary. And you've also, well, for me personally, and I've seen what happens when the distractions are around. Like usually I feel like there's about a 5-day shelf life of like a Black Death on YouTube. People react, people make signs, people make hashtags, and then, we're talking about what happened on Jersey Shore or on Black Inked Crew or something like that. And then it just kind of goes back. And so the Facebook, I think, space can be really damaging to yourself when you kind of analyze it from that, because you can really actually watch people's attention shift and then what it shifts to. And then it's like, oh man, like we're going to be off track here again for a while. And I think that's why that interpersonal piece is important to try to manage, folks. And it's been hard. I mean, like we're talking about that stack of contacts and calls from people and not knowing how to manage, do I isolate each person? Do I send out a group text or to these folks? And do I forward them literature and links, or do I try to give them a better human piece that I think might be more lasting in my impact? If so, what do I say? What do you say to someone who asks you, how can I help, when they watch someone die on TV?
Go get your people.
Yeah.
Go get your friend. Because if you're my friend, you understand that. If you're my true ally, you understand that. It's just kind of like what July was saying, white needs to fight white. I hear you saying that some of this is about the education is our responsibility, and some of it isn't. These people have access to the same resources and information we do, maybe not the same experience. Maybe there's some reference, or fact checking that needs to be done with a person of color. For, non-people of color or non-Black people, to be very specific, to move forward. I wish some white folks would check in with Black people before they made some of the decisions that they made. Like, have you spoken to a Black person about this? But it's not my job. I have jobs that are very important to do.
100%. And I'm sorry if I made any proclivity that made it sound like I was extending that was your job. I was just saying that.
No. Because I do. I have friends and people who I care about. And I'm like, I'm going to share this, or I'm going to impart this information. And, that's one side of it. But the other side of it is some of them need to handle business, and ain't got nothing to do with you or your inbox.
Word.
Well, yeah, that's Danette, I've always thought like a great jobs program for retired Black women. It's like have them sit in boardrooms, and then when they think about an idea, just okay, cool, thank you. And then that would solve a lot of problems where it's just like you being extra, no one asked you for this. But I think to July's point, it feels as if there's just a recognition that this truly is everyone's fight, that the uplifting of Black lives actually serves other people's humanity on a level that has not been threaded through as much. We've moved very quickly and talked a lot. I wanted to get to when talking about the idea of Black space. Of course, right now in the protests is where a lot of the focus is. But we also live in an amazing, beautiful state of Colorado. And I know for me, as soon as quarantine eased up a little bit, I was like, I'm gonna go hug a tree. What is y'all's relationship to the outdoors? Maybe not even as escapism, but we talk about the root. We've only been an urban people, so to speak, for a few generations. Like I'm headed down to Texas and my ancestral home of Arkansas next week, and that's the country. So I'm just interested when we talk about space, what is your relationship to the outdoors?
I can go.
Yeah, July, go.
As a second generation American, my grandmother is from Trinidad and Tobago. My grandfather was from Haiti. And first state they came to America was New York, the city, and eventually ended up in Colorado. Now, my grandma and I have never taken a trip up to the mountains. And I've lived with my grandmother since I was 5. Never did it with my mom, never did it with my dad. We have taken trips to grave sites. And if we went to the mountains, it was to go to a casino. I didn't actually go to the mountains until I went to Ballarat in 5th grade or whenever that was. That was my first time in the mountains. And aside from that, when I had met friends that had white adoptive parents, they were like, hey, we should go camping. I'm like, I've never done that before. So I went camping for the first time as I got older. But as a younger youth, I definitely did not have any experience outdoors with nature. It was, I was on my bike a lot in 4th grade, and I got pretty dark. And my mom, she had made this comment. She's like, "Whoa, you got real dark out there." And, she wasn't like, saying it to put me down or anything. But the way I took it was like, well, I don't want to be this dark again. Because I looked in the mirror and I'm looking at myself like, I'm not beautiful anymore. What happened? So I definitely have not been outside not that much since that summer. And not because I don't want to get dark. Of course, that is just the thing I thought when I was a kid. But just because I feel like, I don't know, I don't have a deep connection to nature like many other people do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me, were you done, July? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. It's interesting too, July, have a grandfather from Barbados and a mother from Jamaica who ended up in New York, and then now we're in Colorado. But my dad's side of the family is actually kind of drastically different. And I don't know if the upbringing has a case to do it, but my dad's father's side are like free Blacks from Montreal who sort of fled to Montreal after the Revolutionary War. And so he recalls all these trips in the VW Bug to the Adirondack forest with his father when he was a child and all these trips. And so when he came out to Colorado, my dad's kind of like, I don't want to say a hippie, but like he wasn't fearful. I mean, he kind of felt like, I guess, what could these mountains show me that the streets of New York didn't? And so he kind of has taken, myself pretty boldly into wilderness a lot. I remember, this is actually a crazy story, but he gave me this book when I was a little kid, like 15 Black Faces and 15 Uncommon Places. And one of the people in that book was this dude who was like a regional director for the national parks. And I remember just being like, ooh, I want to be like that guy. Ironically, about 4 years ago, the author of that book, I was on a panel with her, Caroline Finney. I was like, dude, that book changed my whole life on the outdoors and whether or not we belong to it. But I definitely think that spatially, my history with the mountains, I want to say that I don't know. I always feel like folks love taking the mountains to extra extremes. I always feel like it's like I like hiking, camping. I'm not a rock climber. I'm not gonna camp in the winter. I'm not gonna drop thousands of dollars on specialized gear just so I can camp more hardcore than somebody else. And so, yeah, that's like the kind of extent of it is a lot of childhood stuff that's carried out to today where I camp fairly often in the summer.
So for me, I grew up actually originally in San Diego, California, in a predominantly white community, went to private school. And any day that was nice enough, I happened to have a best friend whose dad was like an old school surfer. And I was an 80s kid, so if you wasn't outside, there wasn't really nothing to do in the house, I didn't, grow up with all of the perks and thrills. Like I remember getting my first computer at about 12 or whatever, and it was like Jane of the Jungle. And, some very basic computer games, nothing that was going to keep me in the house all day. So her father, a very good friend growing up, a little white girl, blonde, we're still very cool to this day, would take us to the beach any day that it was nice enough to do so. And that's where we would spend our entire time. So the beach is free. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty awesome. And they were in a space where it was part of their culture. He was an old surfer from the 70s. And so they had the beach van that had sand in the bottom of it. And they would come pick me up and we would take all of our snacks and stay there all day long. So I loved to be outside. And it wasn't actually until I moved to Colorado that I found myself inside much more because of the weather and the privilege associated with getting to the mountains. You need gas money, camping gear, things like that. And my family wasn't doing that. And I was a new kid to Colorado, so I didn't know a lot of people who were doing that either. It wasn't the same as sharing space with a kid to go to the beach. You can just throw a couple kids in the car and everybody can go to the beach and you got snacks. It's not quite the same for the mountains. And what's funny about what July was saying is that I was actually much darker growing up than I was here in Colorado, but it was because I was always outside. So it wasn't until I moved to Colorado that somebody actually accused me of being light skinned, because I was always outside and I was always in the sun. That's not a conversation anybody ever had with me until I came here, because it's cold, it snows. Me being a beach person, if it was just a little cold, I wasn't going to go outside and do anything. And certainly not to the mountains. And it wasn't until college when I got into the jazz program and got mixed up with some of I was in a white dominated space. I made white friends and they all went camping. And what's funny is that a person that played music at DU wanted me to go on this ski trip, and I'd never been skiing. And I was like, I don't know, it's cold, blah, blah, blah. But he worked with a couple of the people in our circle. Some girls lent me some warmer clothes, things that they had, extra ski gear and things. But there was actually a program at DU, and I still wonder if they have it, but for like $80, and it was only for people of color. There was a movement to try to get people of color to the mountains. So for $80 was like one lunch ticket, one lift ticket, your ski rentals, and a day pass to several of the ski places up here, like Breckenridge and all of that. And so for like $80, I got to go on this trip. but typically it's like $280 to do that ski. And I've never been again. I've been once skiing here in Colorado because I was able to find that deal, and the people in my class were able to kind of pull together ski gear and things for me to wear. But yeah, to this day, I've only been skiing once, and I've lived in Colorado for 15 years. But you know, it was fun. I had a good time. But yeah, it's very expensive to get up there and get out there and do those things. And to me, that's a privilege, you know, to be able to drive 2 hours in any direction and stay all day and spend $100. I mean, it's a very expensive hobby. Yeah. And as far as the camping, I actually have been lucky enough to find a lot of Black people in particular and people of color who like to go camping out here. So I go camping when it's warm. I do go camping. I like to camp. I got a tent. I got a sleeping bag.
There you go.
I do like to go camping. And it's fairly cheap. You know, if you carpool, camping can be pretty cheap.
But I will
can you hook me up with them? I would love to. Yeah.
There's a group of us. I will definitely hook you up. There's a group of us who go every year. And sometimes, you know, like a couple guys bring drums. So it's a drum circle. You know, that's the best. If somebody knows how to play the guitar or somebody brings a drum, man, those campfires be bomb.
That's what's up.
That is like truly one of the most pure experiences in the world. And then you got the people in the other camp down the way, and they just hear, "Oh, what's going on?" Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. And also, just as a light-skinned lad myself, I am lamenting the fact that I'm stuck indoors because I won't get my summer shade this year.
Oh my God.
Well, you know, I'm not necessarily, I will say, I'm not accepted by the dark-skinned community nor the light-skinned community. I am brown-skinned.
Yeah, you in the
middle nation, like y'all got
surfing the line.
For y'all, so you actually live in a good place. Like it's interesting. We are about to open it up to questions, but July, just because you haven't been out as much, and I'm a big fan of the outdoors, I would just love. Could you paint a picture? Like, what would be a cool, like, outdoor thing that you'd like want to do? I know none of us are probably like climbing the side of mountains, but
no.
paint a picture for us of like July out here doing it Colorado big.
Well, from the time that I did go camping for the first time, I do love the smell of a campfire in my clothes when I come home. And yeah, like I don't want to wash anything. Like this is just perfect.
Okay, actually now we can just do it one time for the one time. Everyone, can you just go around and say one great thing about the great outdoors, of course, but also just right now, I think we're all in our houses and it's raining outside and we can't be outside. So just like one good thing about summertime being outside.
Oh, I just love being with the trees, man. I mean, I think that there's so much wonder and mystery that exists in that space. And there's also this weird feeling of protection that I enjoy when I'm there.
Yeah, my favorite thing is cooking on campfire. I love, and I've been camping with both white and Black folks. But some of my white folks, they love to do the most, you know, and I volunteer to stay back and keep the campfire going and keep the meals going. I love it. I cook grits and salmon and all kinds of stuff. I love cooking on a campfire. Like I love, that's like my favorite.
Grits and stuff.
Grits.
Ooh, I've never had campfire grits.
Campfire grits.
Okay.
Sounds like I'd never want to come back home.
Yeah. Great. Just eating, and there's something very spiritual about that. And everybody's not, you know, in that space or whatever, but there's something very spiritual about kind of holding down the campfire, keeping it going and keeping the food kind of going. You know, the people come, they eat, and they go back out into the nature, and I just get to kick my feet up and relax by the fire and get something going again. But yeah, I'm not the one that like wake up and hike 12 miles. No.
I've had the privilege of having a very innate sense like, yo, I am a Black man most likely to be attacked by a mountain lion. The whole world. I just get that spidey sense like, oh, I'm doing the most. I'm out too deep.
Yeah, that's y'all.
The lion.
Do that.
The lion's probably like, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. I want that.
Oh, hey, come here, look at it. He got his summer shade on too. He's already.
One time I hiked to the top and they wanted me to do the belay, the thing, the fall back thing. And I guess I really didn't think it through.
Oh, no.
But I was like, I am not going over the edge of this cliff, guys. Like, I know we came up here. I know we had a plan. I see your ropes. I see everybody else going down. I'm going to hike back. I'm going to go the long way.
That ain't how that's supposed to work. You're supposed to take a class, get a certification.
Nope. I was looking down like, not a chance. I'm not that kind of camper, homie.
Oh man, I want to have like this conversation for longer. Of course, we had to talk about art and the struggle, but just like what you are about when you're outdoors, and then what you just like, that ain't my culture, that ain't my life. We do have a question coming in for JOVAN, so we let that come through. And I just want to add mine, which is fishing has become like, I can't wait to be like a 55-year-old man and get the strap sandals and the whole get up. I've never caught anything. I cannot pull off catching anything, but just being out there, that beautiful cast, and then just the patience. That's an art practice in and of itself. But I should just keep talking. Please, if they're still available, please send in some questions. We love talking to you. But at this moment, I will read this question specifically for you, JOVAN, but of course everyone can chime in after. JOVAN, years ago, he was speaking in Boulder Library in a small room at Jaipur Literature Festival filled with white Boulder allies. How has allies hip changed since the day and that room, or has it?
Hip? How's their hip changed?
I'm assuming. Okay, well, I don't know the whole thing. Do you remember that day? Do you remember your conversation about?
Sure. There's been a lot of
allyship. Oh,
Allyship.
Because I wasn't reading that right. Allies.
Yeah.
a line break. It hasn't. In short, I think Black people are like a really fun conversation space. That doesn't seem to transfer very effectively inside of our network. Denver specifically kind of has the Denver Boulder thing is kind of really interesting because Boulder, Black people are so peppered in. And then in Denver, there's this sort of weird concentration. I mean, I don't know if any of y'all have ever noticed this, but how Black like Southlands and Aurora is. Like there's like weird pockets of like where Black people exist inside of this city, and it's not as fleshly concentrated as it was. And I think that what I often find is that folks have there's a savior complex that is hard to get people over. Because oftentimes the real saving that needs to happen, as we have said in this conversation, is saving yourself and saving your community, the white versus white fight that y'all have kind of been talking about inside of here, that I don't feel like a lot of trending or, a lot of tread has been made inside of those conversations, particularly inside the Black struggle. But I do feel more heard. I do feel more seen. But ain't that the experience of the Black artist, being in the spotlight in front of a large group of people that don't look like you, speaking about your experience and nobody moving an inch. And so it's a hard factor there. I mean, that wasn't a group that my intention was to move them into being more dynamic allies as much as a conversation probably about cultural appropriation in literature or something of that sort. But I certainly think that the allyship for our community, to me, has not seemed to make many more moves beyond the wonderful front yard signs that I see in my neighborhood that say Black Lives Matter. And, but I'm still kind of awaiting the plan or the support. So, yeah.
Sorry, just trying to manage these. I have an interesting follow-up to that. You decide it's interesting. I'm interested by what you're saying. But specifically for Denver, someone said like Denver people show up in an interesting way, and I've always been struck. Denver is mad granola and progressive in mostly white spaces, and Boulder, I didn't even know there was enough to pepper in, enough black people to pepper in, like can't even taste the flavor. Yeah, just splash. But Denver has always been interesting because, like, for the Marade, people show up in a way that they show up. I mean, it might be just be fun, but we boast a large Marade, a large Juneteenth, I think, outside of the demographic. Denver tries to connect to Blackness. And it is mad weird now that Aurora is kind of more the center of Black culture. In some way, I'm a Park Hill dude, so I've always just been like, Aurora, I don't trust you. Those are my own biases.
5 points.
Uh-oh.
We live in a cul-de-sac. I just don't know.
Oh my gosh, stop it.
I've really derailed from what was supposed to be a kind of academic sounding question.
True.
How do you feel about Denver? Like, do you feel at home in Denver, even though it is rapidly gentrifying and changing? Man, I got my Rocky Mountain National Park hat on because I've always liked being Denver, Colorado. So really, like, just is your identity rooted in this place?
What a question.
Yeah, my bad. A lot of different
It's a great question, though.
I definitely think my identity is rooted here. Whether or not, because I grew up here, I feel like I want to be somewhere else. And when I go somewhere else, it feels more like home than being home. For example, Atlanta, Georgia. As soon as I step off the plane, it just seems like home. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. That's where my ancestors were, the South. And, you know, Southern hospitality is just that hospitable. Being from here is, I can't say it has gotten me deeper into my culture or taught me much more about my culture than being somewhere else would. And that might be why I feel like I feel more at home somewhere else. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where I was a couple years ago, I felt more at home than I felt at home. It definitely depends on the people I see around me and how much I can relate. And when I go to that restaurant, they have food that I normally eat, or food that I grew up seeing my people eat, or the people talk to me and have normal conversations. And when I walk down the street, they say hello, or maybe they don't. It's definitely an entire vibe and feeling in my second to second experience that makes me feel that home isn't home.
I have a similar experience with Louisiana. It's funny that you say that. I had a short stint, a couple of years in Louisiana. My youngest child was born in Louisiana, and that is definitely my second home. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, New Orleans. It was the closest thing to home that I felt. I was a military brat, mostly bounced around a little bit, mostly in California, but Japan, Hawaii, lots of places. Denver's the longest place I've lived. But of all the places I've lived, I would say that Louisiana is definitely, if I had to, I love Louisiana. But, you know, it's got the jazz, the food is delicious. But I would say Denver's community is small but mighty. Until I moved to Denver, I would say outside of Louisiana, which is where I was introduced to all kinds of stuff from Dead Prez. Master P when I was there, Master P would come to restaurants and, music was everywhere, and Southern University and like all of that was so much a part of my Black identity. But Denver and Brother Jeff's community and 5 Points and
Definitely.
the things that the Black people do in this community have definitely, I do feel like this is home. It's not something I experienced anywhere else. It's small but mighty. That's all I would say about it.
I want to just say that I think the reason I might feel different is because I was growing up when the gentrification was more heavily, in progress. So when I was 2, I do remember, all of the people that looked like me. But as I turned 5, going to Curtis Park wasn't like it was. And now I'm 23 and it's nothing like I remember it.
It's the same. Look, y'all, I'm an Aurora kid through and through. So Denver is definitely not home, but Aurora definitely is.
For sure.
There's parts of Denver that certainly are, being a part of the National Slam Poetry Team and being a part of Slam Nuba for all the years that I was a part of that organization and the Heart of 5 Points really taught me a lot about how Blackness acts and operates inside of Denver. And, my parents being just the way they are, we are a very, very tight-knit Black community within my family. I think that it's funny with y'all, I did 7 years of hurricane relief in New Orleans. That's where New Orleans Funeral March as a poem came from. And so I definitely felt very at home there as well. And I think, sort of bringing those elements to this space is what people are working and trying to do. And I think, even the fact that the conversation has been brought to our attention today, I think it's something that we can all do to try to curate more of a home here. This whole conversation has sort of reminded me man, we should all just go on a camping trip ourselves and bring our drums and do our things. You can make them salmon grits and, and we can.
Oh, I will.
But I think that's one of the things that we probably need to kind of explore doing a little bit more dynamically within ourselves is ensuring that this is the home that we want to be and try and incorporate some of the vibes we may have experienced other places here. Yeah. Quinn, did you leave us?
That's the
I would like to just throw in one thought too, that it almost doesn't matter where you are or what the audience looks like. But when I actually spoke with Taj today about this interview, and he reminded me just the overall importance of our own narrative, no matter where we are. Even if we're in Denver or the demographic or the audience is white, it's just really important that we are telling our own story. Black people aren't linear. You could be from Aurora.
Oh my goodness.
No, but it's really important that we are the ones telling the story. So it doesn't matter who's in the audience. It doesn't matter where we are. We just have to make sure that's the most important piece.
I agree with that. I love the audience no matter how it comes. It's just the feeling that the audience brings. Because I've had a crowd of white people who loved me and we were able to vibe and we made music together. And I've also had a crowd of white people that just stared at me. What is this? I don't know what this is. Why is she on stage? Can we get to the next act? So it's not necessarily what they look like. It's just how it feels. And since we have began to develop this white allyship more so in the face of COVID, I think we definitely haven't made much mark in terms of tread, but we are making steps toward the right direction.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long fight, but yeah, we got to make it worthwhile in whatever ways that fits our narrative. It's a great way to put it, Danette. And just make a point, y'all talked about the South. I think humidity is a thing that so where good idea of home, that one thing Denver is missing. But we are going to wrap up pretty soon here, but also just wanted to give y'all a chance, even in the time of COVID. I know y'all are busy creators, so if there's anything that you want to shout out or just say your Cash App and Venmo, and one more again for the peoples. Yeah, just let us know. Please let us know what are places that we can see y'all more.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely kind of I've been sort of using the space to try to be as, to add, taking away the time that I spend on the commute and trying to put it into my creativity. So my website is just myname.com, www.jovanmays.com. And we're trying to revamp that space. I'm doing some pretty cool stuff with doing some historical analysis of the song Amazing Grace right now, and how it's kind of a representation of like the depth of the betrayal that's happened to the Black community. And so as I continue to work on this poem, that's really kind of been my main focus piece on what's going on. And so there, my whole name is pretty simple, at Jovan Mays on Instagram, on Facebook, on my website. And so you can just follow me kind of that way and we'll go from there.
I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Danette Hollowell Music on Instagram and Facebook, or Vashti Danette, Vashti Danette. And hopefully the show will have the correct spelling of my name, because that's always fun, trying to get people to spell my name correctly. And I really don't have much, but I do have a couple songs. One song on Bandcamp that I just reposted on my page. And I created a visual for my cover of Strange Fruit more recently. And I'm really proud of it. And yeah, my Cash App is on there. And my Venmo is on there. And if you want to donate to me and this baby, boom, baby,
let's go.
Then that's where you can do it. My virtual baby shower.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. And hopefully when we're all let out of the coronavirus jail, I will see you on stage somewhere, because that's where I shine. Is on stage with real instruments and real people.
All right. I am July, pronounced like pie, not jelly. My born name is Bradley, so you might also know me as Bradley Jones. I am normally in my places of business, whether that is at home in front of this webcam or at Open Lab when it is safe with the youth. I do want to shout out, if your youth, your children are interested in music, check out Youth on Record, Open Lab. The programming is definitely beautiful, and it is growing day by day, getting better and better. And we have free programming after school if they want to come in and make some music when everything opens back up, of course. We're also online, so if they wanted to join those Zoom meetings and make some music with us online Tuesday through Friday, that is an option. Other than that, I am a studio engineer by night, so if you are a musician and you're looking to book some studio time, come holla at your girl. My Cash App is July J, J-E-L-I-E-J. My Venmo is Bradley-Jones, Bradley, B-R-A-D-L-I-E Jones, J-O-N-E-S. And follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm at most of the time. My Facebook notifications are turned off because I get tagged in so much irrelevant.
Check out my song, yo.
Not even just that. And the people that friend me that I don't know who they are, but they're from different countries, but I don't necessarily think about it because we have mutual friends. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And then they message me saying, hey. So Facebook Messenger is also uninstalled. So hit me up on Instagram, JELIE303, and that will end what I wanted to say.
Yeah, and I got a couple more things to add. I'm sorry, you made me think about something. Yeah, the work that we publish our students' work at is www.aurorastory.org. That is Aurora, the greatest city in the whole world, story.org. Feel free to check in there. And then in addition to that, I've been on a really, really cool project. It's kind of a project that's built on telling the lynching story of Colorado. And it's with the Equal Justice Initiative, the Episcopal Church, and a lot of really grounded activators within the city. At the Blair Caldwell Library, they're going to be putting together a presentation of the kind of work that's been done in the memorial that's going to be set for a man named Preston Porter Jr., a young who was lynched in our vicinity in the early 1900s, I believe. And that work is going to be pretty dynamic. So Colorado Lynching Memorial, I think, is what you Google to find that work, but things have been really generating there, and we're starting to kind of get to our final steps. So
I'll sing.
Let's go.
I'll rap.
Just got a whole band.
We're ready.
And I'll wrap up this conversation with for y'all's time and wisdom, and just a chance to share is so good for the soul. So I'm just really appreciative of y'all. Thank you for everyone tuning in to question askers, the donators. We love you, we appreciate you, and Headroom Sessions as a whole for hosting these conversations. We'll be back here at this time next Thursday with a new group of panelists and myself having another conversation. So peace and love to you. A happy Juneteenth to everybody.
Happy Juneteenth!
It's my birthday
Your
too.
American holiday.
And happy birthday, July!
Happy birthday, July.
Oh yeah, I'm fortunate enough to be your host, Quinn Marchman. Please just check out blackactorsguild.org. We're actually running down a really cool thing in the pipeline, creation of a beautiful Black woman, Christina Pitaluga. So just want to lift her up. I will keep on rambling because I have nothing better to do, but we will end this conversation here. So again, peace and love to y'all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Quinn. Danette,
Thank
y'all
you,
are
Quinn.
awesome.
Thank you too
Thank
as
you.
well.
Peace. I don't know who's supposed to finish the